Now we're going to do a little surface plate measuring and checking. And I have sine plates, sine vices, and V blocks, and I have a 10th indicator over here, and I have a half thou. To set these up, you do the sine of the angle you want times the 5" or 4", the distance between these pins. So the sine of 45 times 5 is 3.5355. I rounded off to 4 decimal places. Easiest way to get this gauge block build up, Joe blocks, is eliminate the last number. So you have a 0.1005 block, which is here. So now you have 3.435. So now there's 135 thou block in the kit, so now it's 0.135. You can pretty well do this in your head if you once you get going. So now you have 3.3000. There's a 300 thou block, and there's a 3" block. So now you have your bit build up. The 300 thou block, you have to be careful because it is almost square, and some blocks don't have as much writing as this on it, and you could get it the wrong way and really throw your numbers off. So just keep an eye on 300 thou. Most kits are almost square like that. I'm not even going to try to ring these together, but the idea is if you clean them, you can get a good stack of blocks that'll stick together. It's either because they're so flat, there's a vacuum in there and they hold. That was already set, and you feel these, you loosen these off, push down, tighten these up, and we'll get back to this in a bit. So here's a pair of my first year apprentice, a pair of blocks, and the idea is this is a matched pair of Mitutoyo V blocks I've had since 1985. We have a master one you can set in, and you can watch this. This is a 10th indicator, so it only has 10 thou range. So be careful with them, you'll break the tip off, and don't come this way, that way. Drag the tip across so it rises up and doesn't break. So you can see that sitting on the 2 thou mark, and if you go along there, there's no movement at all. Flip it around and try the other side, and when you get your project done, this is what I want to see and you want to see, is no movement at all and at the 2 thou mark. Same as the other one. These had a serial number on them one time, a little tag. They were a matched pair. And was I using the small one? Yes, I would. Yeah, I must have had it canted a bit. Now see, that's just reading dead zero. So now we're going to use this master block to check. You've milled these in, and the idea is to find your lowest point and your highest point. So when you go to grind that on the grinder, there's kind of no surprises, because an extra 1 thou or 2 thou cut on a grinder is a big deal. And I really shouldn't be using the 10th indicator on this because I'm going to run out of range. So I'm going to use the height gauge and this. And I'm just going to use this as a gauge. I'm not going to use the dial. If I set that to 0, now this is a little heavy to push, so I'm just going to pull this along. So it's 5 thou, and by the looks of it, it's low on this end by 5. When I switch this around, pull it across, it's +4 going up to about +7. So this is pretty good actually, because this was just done on a milling machine. So what you do is, that's the highest point. mark this off as, if you're running off, so it's, just mark a 7, you know it's 7th thou high. So now when you go to your second V block, figure out which one's the highest point and what's the lowest, and this is pretty darn good. It's running between 2 and 3 thou plus. Move it back and forth, there's a grid in there, it'll follow, you'll feel it, clean it off, and this is running 4 to 5 thou plus. So this right here, we're going to call the highest point. So what you do now, in that corner, right there is the highest point. So there's where you're going to touch off on the grinder. We'll use this height gauge, or this toolmaker vise, and you can see there's a bit of dirt in here already, but by sliding it back and forth, and you pick the correct pin. This is just a short range between here and here, and it pulls down and in. So you touch off with your grinder here, you can set your parameters. Take 6 thou off here, bring the head back up, take it back to the same number, and you can do that on all 4 sides. Once you've done that, you can redress, and now maybe just take a half thou or thou off, and because you're taking so little off, the wheel has a less tendency to wear, and so 1 thou here, you can flip it around, make sure one little bit of grit will ruin your whole day. So rub it, you can feel it, it runs smooth. Take that back down to the number and do all 4, and you have a ground-in square. Now that is after you've ground all these sides in, and that is another ball game. I didn't go over this closely, but you basically put that on the service grinder and grind that side. Clean it all off, put that down. Put this one down, grind that side. Now you can put both ground sides down, find the highest one, touch off, grind it until that is, these are parallel ground, and so you mark them with your marker. Now they can go into a toolmaker vise this way. Now you can leave this hang over the vise a bit. Grind this, flip the vise, and grind that. So now you've got 2 parallel sides and 2 other sides that are ground and square to this and square here, and you can basically put that back down and grind that, and do the other side. Which one was it? This side, and grind that. We can show that in a different video. So you see how the 10th indicator for checking, you can use that as a gauge and see how parallel it is. This is basically right now just showing how parallel it is. It's not measuring. If you really wanted to measure accurately on here, you could use Joe blocks. And if you knew a size, say you wanted to measure this height, and it's supposed to, I believe this was 2-inch, 285 thou, the buildup. If you have 500 of these make and you really wanted to know how accurately you're taking them in on the mill or grinding them, you would use this gauge block setup as a master setup, and you can leave it there for the full run or all day in that. Oh, come on, and you can reset your indicator to your 0, and this will be your, come on, it's not flat. No, we're gonna, so you set your indicator 0, whoops, and now if you come across on here and they're coming off on a CNC within plus or minus 2 or 3 or 5 thou, it's okay, this is only a 10 thou range. So now you can come across on here, and this one theoretically would be half a thou low if that was your master height. You can use this gauge blocks. If you need a bigger range, use an indicator with more range, because this actually has 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 thou range, and if you had a thou indicator, you'd have a 60 thou range. That's more accurate, and it's so much better to just touch off on that. You know these gauge blocks are plus or minus, if they're a shop grade, they're plus or minus 8 millionths of an inch. So most shops you don't need to get that accurate because it's got to be climate controlled and humidity controlled if you're really that serious, aerospace. As you can see, you pull that along, it's reading dead zero. This is flat. You can also use a sine bar off the table and gauge blocks, and if I did that build up and backwards by the 5-inch distance, I'd know what angle that is. There's a lot of different ways of measuring with an indicator, not only as an indicator itself for parallelism or for transferring a size from here to here, telling you. You can also, if you're going to use it to measure, say on a lathe you want to measure a taper per inch, don't use a needle at a steep angle, because then you start getting an error with the trig. If you do trig, actually when you get a Mitutoyo indicator, it will have a little chart comes with it, and it'll show the error in the reading at different angles. If it's straight on, then you have the accurate, it's within plus or minus a tenth. Now mind you, at 30 degrees it's only off about 6 decimal places, but it still makes a big deal if you've got a 10-year flight to Mars and your toilet starts leaking or something. You never know. It's all about the accuracy. Guys go through life saying, ah, it's good enough. It's not good enough for a good tool maker. It has to be exact. And you're always trying to get it better and better and better. So that's good.